welcome and welcome back to my channel. My name is Veronia, and in today's video I want to talk about spending money. Particularly if you feel like you spend too much money, I really want to deep dive on the reasons why you might be doing that in the first place. Now, the reason why I wanted to do this video is because spending money is something that's always a part of our lives, and also it's something that we're going to continue to do anyway. So you do need to spend money sometimes in order to live your life. However, there is a really clear difference between people who actually end up spending their money but they're also able to save and invest for their future versus people that are just spending all of their money and literally living paycheck to paycheck. So what I really want to do is talk about the reasons why you might be spending too much money and giving you food for thought so that you know what you could potentially do next to actually avoid that. So the first reason why you might be spending too much money is because it's actually seen as the norm when it comes to our society. Now you might be asking, Auntie V, what on earth are you talking about? So here's what I mean. So in order for our economy to grow, for a lot of Western countries, the governments actually need people to spend their money, and here's why. So if you're actually able to spend your money, you're obviously going to maybe stores, maybe you're buying things, maybe you're buying services or products, and once you've actually spent that money, that means that that business who basically sold that product or service to you has essentially made money. And so because that business has now made money, they are also able to actually invest in their own businesses. So maybe they might hire employees, maybe they might be trying to grow their company or whatever it is. And so because of the fact that they've now hired these new employees, those employees now have jobs, and obviously that means that they have more cha-ching, so they have more money. And so what that means is that they will now also want to spend that money as well. And so again, because they're now spending the money, more businesses make money, they then reinvest back into their business, and then they hire more employees, and then again those employees obviously now have money, and then they end up spending even more. So you can see that there is a whole cycle when it comes to actually building our economy. And so one big reason as to why our economy is able to grow is because of our spending. And so because of that, it is going to be seen as the norm for you to spend your money, and you're almost even going to be encouraged to spend your money. And so what you will find is because our economy is actually just basically fueled on spending, there are going to be certain initiatives to actually encourage you to spend even more money. So even when it comes to the pandemic, when people lost a lot of their jobs, that obviously meant that people weren't spending as much money, and obviously that's not what the government wants. And so essentially what happened is you now started seeing initiatives where we were now encouraged to spend even more money. And so for example, in the UK, we had the Eat Out to Help Out scheme. So what they were doing is they were trying to encourage people to now go to restaurants because they needed people to spend their money. Very similar when it comes to the US, where they were actually sending out stimulus checks to encourage people to go and spend their money. They weren't encouraging you to come and just keep those stimulus checks at home. They wanted you to go out and then start spending your money, because again, they need you to be able to spend that money so that businesses can make money and then hire more employees. And so the reason why you might be thinking, hold on, why am I always spending so much money? Like, why doesn't the government encourage us to maybe keep our money? A big reason for that is because of how the way our economy is built. And so really recognizing that and understanding that businesses and the governments are going to want you to spend money, that is going to help you influence your decisions, because then you'll start to realize, okay, there are certain initiatives happening to encourage me to spend money. But then what you want to be thinking about is that actually going to be helping my own personal finances and my financial goals as well? Because if it actually isn't, then you can start to think, hold on, even though that they're doing these initiatives based on where I want to go with my personal finances, I know that I'm not going to just be listening to all the noise about 50% off or government sending me checks or anything like that. What I'm really going to be doing is thinking, how is that going to impact my own personal finances, and what do I need to do with my personal finances to make sure that I'm spending a lot more intentionally and not just spending money because the government has told me to. And if you're liking this so far, then feel free to give me a thumbs up, as it really does help to support the channel, plus it's free. So the second reason why you might actually be spending too much money is because you have not clarified your financial goals. And so again, you might be asking, Auntie V, what do you actually mean by this? So here's what I mean. A big reason why you will find that so many more people actually just end up spending money is because either they don't have any financial goals or they haven't actually been clear on their own financial goals in the first place. And so if you actually don't have any financial goals, or maybe your goals aren't actually clear, then what would be the point in you actually saving or investing your money? There probably wouldn't be. And so what you would end up doing is you would then start thinking, actually, I may as well just spend my money because I don't have any financial goals in the first place. And so this is exactly where I was before I actually started tackling my own personal finances. So when I was actually getting a consistent paycheck, no matter how much I was making, all I was doing was just spending left, right, and center. And I was essentially living paycheck to paycheck. And even worse, I actually ended up using debt to finance my lifestyle, which is obviously something that you don't want to do. However, when I actually started clarifying my financial goals, before I even started trying to save money or actually pay off debt or do any of those things, because I had certain financial goals. So for example, in my case, I actually really wanted to pay off my debt in a certain amount of time. Plus, I also wanted to save up for an emergency fund, and I also wanted to start working towards financial independence and also being financially secure. And so once I was very clear on those goals and I knew exactly how much money I needed to be setting aside to reach those goals in the time frame that I wanted to, that really motivated me to actually really prioritize my financial goals versus just spending anyhow because I had nothing to work towards. Now, really being clear that I'm not saying that I then completely stopped spending my money and then that's it, but what it meant is because I now had the mindset that I had certain financial goals that I wanted to reach, I was then able to prioritize more of my savings to go towards reaching those goals, and then everything else, once I had already taken care of that, I was then able to just spend the rest of the money because I had already prioritized my financial goals. Now, this is something I really deep dive in my coaching program, so particularly if you're a woman and you're really trying to maybe clarify some of your financial goals so that you can spend a lot more intentionally and really not feel so guilty or restricted at the same time, then definitely book a call with me and we can talk through whether this program might be right for you. I will of course link that up here for you and in the description below. But essentially, a big reason why you might be spending too much money is because of the fact that you don't have any financial goals, and so there's not really going to be a point in you saving or investing for anything because you don't have anything that you're working towards in the first place. So the third reason why you might be spending too much money is due to the fact that you may not be financially educated. Now, this is something that I'm really passionate about because obviously we are not taught about financial education in schools at all. And even if you study things like economics or accounting, you would be surprised at the amount of accountants that you have there that have not actually focused on their own personal finances, and they don't even know how to manage their own money, because managing your own money is going to be a little bit different compared to actually dealing with a company's finances. And so because the majority of people aren't actually financially educated, it actually prevents them from building real wealth and even becoming financially independent. And so when I'm talking about financial education, for example, in my case, I would definitely not say that spending money is bad. In fact, I actually really like spending money and I am secretly a spender, whereas my husband is more of a saver. I'm not even going to lie to you. I'm going to be honest and let you know. But the difference between how I actually spend my money versus someone who isn't financially educated is going to be huge. So for example, in my case, I know that in order for me to actually spend a lot more money, I need to also be focusing on building assets. So these are things that are going to be putting money in my pocket so that I can be able to live my desired lifestyle. And so once I've actually really focused on building those assets, that is going to pay for my lifestyle, where I can then use that money to actually spend it. But the problem that you'll find is that if you're not financially educated, what you might be thinking is that in order for you to basically spend your money, you either need to just be spending your whole paycheck and essentially be living paycheck to paycheck, or you will then start to use debt to actually finance that lifestyle instead. And so what you'll be doing is you'll be using credit card debt to actually just pay for all of these things, or you might even be using these buy now pay later schemes. But the reason why that's a big problem is because you are going to end up having to pay back that money, and at the end of the day, once you've actually spent that money and you've incurred all of this interest, you're only going to be left with all of these liabilities that just aren't putting anything in your pocket. But at the same time, you're going to have all of this interest that has been racking up that you're now going to have to pay to the credit card company. And so again, spending money isn't bad. However, the way you actually end up spending your money is going to dictate how you actually end up living your life in the future. So if you're asking, you know, how do I now start to build that financial education? Well, there are so many resources online. There are also books, and I've got some of my favorite personal finance books in the description below, so you can definitely check it out. You can watch YouTube videos like mine as well. You can also join courses. I do have my one-to-one coaching program, which really helps you with your financial education as well. But once you now start to really consume that content and really understand how money works, you'll be surprised at how much more you're going to end up spending intentionally because you have that built up financial education. So the fourth reason why you might be spending too much money is because you give into lifestyle creep. And so what I mean by lifestyle creep is basically when your income now starts to increase, what essentially happens is rather than you actually saving or investing the difference, you are actually spending the difference. And so what happens is once your income starts to increase, so do your expenses. And so what happens is that even though your income has increased, you still feel like you're basically living paycheck to paycheck because your expenses have now also increased. And so this is now where you might actually start getting the nicer car. Yeah, but I feel like I would want to buy the BMW because I would look great in that car. Maybe you decide that you're going to get a bigger house. Maybe you also decide that you're now going to start going to more bougie restaurants because you can afford it now. So all of these expenses will really start to creep up just because your income has gone up. And so again, that's really why I always agree with the saying that it's really not about how much money you make, but it's about how much money you actually keep. Because what you will find mind is that there may be people that are still earning 6 figures, but they are still essentially living paycheck to paycheck. Now, if you feel like you might be living paycheck to paycheck and you're not really sure what to do about it, then definitely check out my video where I talk about that in a bit more detail. I will of course link that up here for you and in the description below. But essentially, if you find that your income has increased but you're still actually spending too much money, a big reason behind that could be potentially due to lifestyle creep. So the 5th reason why you might be spending too much money is due to immediate gratification. Now, while I'm talking about this is the fact that we are now based in a culture where we really always want things now, and we pretty much want things instantly. And I think when it comes to things like social media, particularly if you're seeing maybe people that are of a similar age to you, maybe living a certain lifestyle that you want, you may essentially want to start having those things. And this is really where the dangers of buy now pay later schemes can come in, because what you're doing is, rather than thinking about the money that you have now that you want to spend now, you're thinking about future money that can now be put under payments where you feel like you don't really necessarily need to be paying very much every single month. And so you keep spending more money buying these things, having these payments because of that immediate gratification, because you want things now. Now, am I saying that you should never buy things for yourself now and that you should just be waiting about 10 or 20 years before you actually spend your money? Of course not. But what I'm saying is, when it really comes to that immediate gratification, really ask yourself why you may actually want that particular item now, and is there any way that you could maybe plan for that expense so that actually, rather than just buying it and then becoming broke by the end of the month, you've actually planned for that in advance, and so you won't feel so guilty actually buying that particular item because you already know that you already set money aside for it. So again, I will never tell you not to spend your money, but all I would say is really think about how you're spending your money and why you're actually spending that money in the first place, because answering those 2 questions will really help you to understand whether you're actually spending intentionally or whether you're just spending your money without even realizing it. So if you did like this video, then please do give me a thumbs up if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments what are other reasons why people might be spending too much money. I do post every Tuesday and Friday, so if you would like to know more, then of course you can subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys on Tuesday.